Hello, everyone. Welcome to an open mic. This is hopefully going to be a fun time. I do apologize for having to reschedule. I had an obligation yesterday that came up. Let's see, who do we have in the back right now? We have Credo Bunk. Welcome to the live stream. Welcome.
Hello, thanks.
Just a couple of announcements. I am debating Smoky Saints this Thursday on masks and the coronavirus. It'll be Thursday the 22nd at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and that will be on Smoky Saints channel. And welcome, Nicholas, Proclaimer of Messiah. How are you, Nicholas?
I'm
Hi.
good. Hello. Good to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. All right. So, if any particular topic you guys are interested in, or maybe I could do a little bit of play a little bit of a portion of a debate, and we can have a discussion on that portion.
Yes, it's fine.
Yeah, Nicholas, what do you think?
That sounds fun to me. Yeah.
All right, sure. So this is probably my favorite debate of all time. Let me pull it up. It's William Lane Craig versus Sean Carroll. And we're just going to briefly look at Sean Carroll's opening statement. Share. Share audio. Cosmology. Okay, let me know if you guys can see my screen.
I see it.
All right, excellent.
Yes.
Let's talk about his opening presentation. I think he is I think Sean Carroll is a very sharp debater, and and I think he won this debate. Probably one of the few debates that Dr. William Lane Craig lost. I will preface this by saying that I have immense respect for Dr. Craig. He is definitely one of the best speakers around today. So let's just give this a quick listen to.
Intelligent agents like ourselves appeal to an observer self-selection effect accomplishes nothing because there's no reason whatever
Hold
the
on.
most observable worlds or the most
Will
Yeah,
you pause it?
Yeah, sure.
It has a really echoey sound, so we should all mute our mics. I think someone's picking it up on their mic and making it echo.
thank you so much for that. Yeah, let's all mute ourselves.
probable observable worlds are worlds in which that kind of observer exists. Indeed, the opposite appears to be true. Most observable worlds will be Boltzmann brain worlds. Since we are presumably not Boltzmann brains, that fact strongly disconfirms a naturalistic world on.
If you go to Cosmology here, the Queer Herd Forum has been very wonderful. I thank Dr. Craig for participating. For everyone here, I appreciate your attendance. And I need to add a word of appreciation to this beautiful chapel that we're holding the event in. I just hope that somewhere in the middle of my talking, the roof does not fall on my head. But if it does, that would be evidence, and I would update my beliefs accordingly. I also want to start with a confession that my goal here is not to win a debate. The discussion we're having tonight does not reflect a debate that is ongoing in the professional cosmology community. If you go to cosmology conferences, there's a lot of talk about the origin and nature of the universe. There is no talk about what role God might have played in bringing the universe about. It is not an idea that is taken seriously. My goal is to explain why we think that. You may or may not agree with me at the end, but you should be able to understand why we cosmologists have that view. And it comes down to a conflict between two major fundamental pictures of the world, what philosophers would call ontologies, naturalism and theism. Naturalism says that all that exists is one world, the natural world, obeying laws of nature, which science can help us discover. Theism says that in addition to the natural world, there is something else, at the very least God, perhaps there are other things as well. I want to argue that naturalism is far and away the winner when it comes to cosmological explanation. And it comes down to 3 points. First, naturalism works. It accounts for the data we see. Second, the evidence is against theism. And third, theism is not well defined. I'm going to be emphasizing this third point because if you ask a theist about the definition, they will give you some very rigorous sounding definition of what they mean by God, the most perfect being, the grounding for all existence, and so forth. There are thousands of such definitions, which is an issue, but the real problem is not with the definitions, it's when you connect the notion of God to the world we observe. That's where apparently an infinite amount of flexibility comes in, and I'm going to be inveighing against using that in cosmology. So I think I can make these points basically by following Dr. Craig's organization, starting with the Kalam cosmological argument. And unlike what he said I should be doing, I want to challenge the first of the premises. That if the universe began to exist, it has a transcendent cause. The problem with this premise is that it is false. There's almost no explanation or justification given for this premise in Dr. Craig's presentation. But there's a bigger problem with it, which is that it is not even false. The real problem is that these are not the right vocabulary words to be using when we discuss fundamental physics and cosmology. This kind of Aristotelian analysis of causation was cutting-edge stuff 2,500 years ago. Today we know better. Our metaphysics must follow our physics. That's what the word metaphysics means. And modern physics, you open a quantum field theory textbook or a general relativity textbook, you will not find the words transcendent cause anywhere. What you find are differential equations. This reflects the fact that the way that physics is known to work these days is in terms of patterns, unbreakable rules, laws of nature. Given the world at one point in time, we will tell you what happens next. There's no need for any extra metaphysical baggage like transcendent causes on top of that. It's precisely the wrong way to think about how the fundamental reality works. The question you should be asking is, what is the best model of the universe that science can come up with? By a model, I mean a formal mathematical system that purports to match on to what we observe. So if you want to know whether something is possible in cosmology or physics, you ask, can I build a model? Can I build a model where the universe had a beginning but did not have a cause? The answer is yes, it's been done. 30 years ago, very famously, Stephen Hawking and Jim Hartle presented the no-boundary quantum cosmology model. The point about this model is not that it's the right model. I don't think that we're anywhere near the right model yet. The point is that it is completely self-contained. It is an entire history of the universe which does not rely on anything outside. It just is like that. The demand for more than a complete and consistent model that fits the data is a relic of a pre-scientific view of the world. My claim is that if you had a perfect cosmological model that accounted for the data, you would go home and declare yourself having been victorious. You might also ask, could the universe be eternal, since Dr. Craig talked about this, without having a beginning at all? And again, the question is, yes, just build a model. This is my favorite model. It's actually not even a model that I think is right, once again. It's a model that I helped create. But it's about the search for models, not about saying that any one model is the right idea. We hope that someday we get there, but we don't claim that we are there yet. So whether or not the universe can be eternal does not come down to a conversation about abstract principles. It comes down to a conversation about building models and seeing which one provides the best account for what we see the universe to be doing. So I'd like to talk about the Bordet-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, since Dr. Craig emphasizes it. And the rough translation is that in some universes, not all, the space-time description that we have as a classical space-time breaks down at some point in the past. Where Dr. Craig says that the Bordet-Guth-Vilenkin theorem implies the universe had a beginning, that is false. That is not what it says. What it says is that our ability to describe the universe classically, that is to say, not including the effects of quantum mechanics, gives out. That may be because there's a beginning, or it may be because the universe is eternal, either because the assumptions of the theorem are violated or because quantum mechanics becomes important. If you need to invoke a theorem, because that's what you like to do rather than building models, I would suggest the quantum eternity theorem. If you have a universe that obeys the conventional rules of quantum mechanics, has a non-zero energy, and the individual laws of physics are themselves not changing with time, that universe is necessarily eternal. The time parameter in Schrodinger's equation, telling you how the universe evolves, goes from minus infinity to infinity. Now, this might not be the definitive question, the definitive answer to the real world, because you can always violate the assumptions of the theorem, but because it takes quantum mechanics seriously, it's a much more likely starting point for analyzing the history of the universe. But again, I will keep reiterating what matters are the models, not the abstract principles. Now, Dr. Craig brings up an argument about the second law of thermodynamics, and I've written a whole book, you can buy it on Amazon right now from your iPhones, about the second law and its relationship to cosmology. It is certainly a true question, a true issue that we don't know why the early universe had a low entropy and entropy has ever been increasing. That's a good challenge for cosmology. To imagine that cosmologists cannot answer that question without somehow invoking God is a classic God of the gaps move. I know that Dr. Craig says that's not what he's doing, but then he does it. We don't know why the early universe had a low entropy, but that is not an argument that we can't figure it out. There's more than one possibility. Maybe there is a principle, like Stephen Hawking would say, that puts the early universe in a low entropy state. Or maybe there is no high entropy state. In my model of an eternal universe, the reason why our universe is always changing is because the universe always can change. There is no equilibrium for it to fall into. Dr. Craig brings up a quote, he brings up various things that I think really muddle the cosmological picture here. He says that my model is not working very well because it violates unitarity, the conservation of information, and that is straightforwardly false. In my model, unitarity is the whole point. There's a quantum mechanical wave function that describes the evolution of the universe from one piece into multiple pieces, and that evolution is perfectly unitary. He quotes Stephen Hawking backsliding in his statement about baby universes, but that was in the context of black holes that had nothing to do with cosmology. That quote was taken completely out of context. Finally, he makes a big deal about Boltzmann brains. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Most importantly, he talks about the fact that if the universe is eternal and you have a second law of thermodynamics, then there must have been a moment in the middle when the entropy was lowest, and he calls this a thermodynamic beginning and quotes another paper. That's fine, except it's equivocation on the word beginning. A thermodynamic beginning is not a beginning, it happens in the middle. It's a moment in the history of the universe from which the entropy is higher in one direction of time and the other direction of time. There is no room in such a conception for God to have brought the universe into existence at any one moment. If you really believe that the beginning of the universe is an important piece of evidence for God, an eternal universe with a low entropy state in the middle is not helping your case. What you should be doing is trying to build models, like I said. So the question is, are there realistic models of eternal cosmologies? Well, I spent half an hour on the internet. I was able to come up with about 17 different plausible-looking models of eternal cosmologies. I do not claim that any of these is the right answer. We're nowhere near the right answer yet. But you can come up with objections to every one of these models. You cannot say that they are not eternal. There's a theorem, Borde-Guth-Vilenkin, that has assumptions. So if you violate those assumptions, you can violate the theorem. Meanwhile, theism, I would argue, is not a serious cosmological model. That's because cosmology is a mature subject. We care about more things than just creating the universe. We care about specific details. At the cosmology conferences, we're discussing these questions that you see before you. I'm not going to list all of them, but a real cosmological model wants to predict what is the amount of density perturbation in the universe, and so forth. Theism does not even try to do this because ultimately theism is not well defined. So let's go to the second argument, the teleological argument from fine-tuning. I'm very happy to admit right off the bat, this is the best argument that the theists have when it comes to cosmology. That's because it plays by the rules. You have phenomena, you have parameters of particle physics and cosmology, and then you have two different models, theism and naturalism, and you want to compare which model is the best fit for the data. I applaud that general approach. Given that, it is still a terrible argument. It is not at all convincing. I will give you 5 quick reasons why theism does not offer a solution to the purported fine-tuning problem. First, I am by no means convinced that there is a fine-tuning problem. And again, Dr. Craig offered no evidence for it. It is certainly true that if you change the parameters of nature, our local conditions that we observe around us would change by a lot. I grant that quickly. I do not grant that therefore life could not exist. I will start granting that once someone tells me the conditions under which life can exist. What is the definition of life, for example? If it's just information processing, thinking, or something like that, there's a huge panoply of possibilities. They sound very science fiction-y, but then again, you're the one who's changing the parameters of the universe. The results are going to sound like they come from a science fiction novel. Sadly, we just don't know whether life could exist if the conditions of our universe were very different, because we only see the universe that we see. Secondly, God doesn't need to fine-tune anything. We talk about the parameters of physics and cosmology, the mass of the electron, the strength of gravity, and we say if they weren't the numbers that they were, then life itself could not exist. That really underestimates God by a lot, which is surprising from theists, I think. In theism, life is not purely physical. It's not purely a collection of atoms doing things like it is in naturalism. I would think that no matter what the atoms were doing, God could still create life. God doesn't care what the mass of the electron is. He can do what he wants. The only framework in which you can honestly say that the physical parameters of the universe must take on certain values in order for life to exist is naturalism. The third point is that the fine-tunings that you think are there might go away once you understand the universe better. They might only be apparent. There's a famous example that theists like to give, or even cosmologists who haven't thought about it enough, that the expansion rate of the early universe is tuned to within 1 part in 10 to the 60th. That's the naive estimate back of the envelope, pencil, and paper you would do. But in this case, you can do better. You can go into the equations of general relativity, and there is a correct, rigorous derivation of the probability. And when you ask the same question using the correct equations, you find that the probability is 1. All but a set of measure 0 of early universe cosmologies have the right expansion rate to live for a long time and allow life to exist. I can't say that all parameters fit into that paradigm, but until we know the answer, we can't claim that they are definitely finely tuned. Number 4, there's an obvious and easy naturalistic explanation in the form of the cosmological multiverse. People like to worry about the multiverse. It sounds extravagant. I claim the multiverse is amazingly simple. It is not a theory. It is the prediction of physical theories that are themselves quite elegant, small, and self-contained that create universe after universes. There's no reason, no right that we have to expect that the whole entire universe looks like the conditions we have right now. But more importantly, if you take the multiverse as your starting point, you can make predictions. We live in an ensemble, and we should be able to predict the likelihoods that the conditions around us take different forms. So in cosmology papers dealing with the multiverse, you see graphs like this that try to predict the density of dark matter given other conditions in the multiverse. You do not see graphs like this in the theological papers trying to give God credit for explaining the fine-tuning, because theism is not well-defined. Now, Dr. Craig makes a lot about the Boltzmann brain problem, the problem that in the multiverse, we could just be random fluctuations rather than growing in the aftermath of a hot Big Bang. This is a significant misunderstanding of how the multiverse works. The multiverse doesn't say that everything that can possibly happen happens with equal probability. It says that there's a definite history of the multiverse and you can make predictions. Different multiverse models will have different ratios of ordinary observers to random observers. That's a good thing. That helps us distinguish between viable models of the multiverse and non-viable models. And there are plenty of viable models where the Boltzmann brain or random fluctuations do not dominate. Furthermore, just as a little preview of coming attractions, I'm trying to write a paper when I'm not debating about God and cosmology. I'm a physicist, and I'm currently working on a paper that says that actually Boltzmann brains random fluctuations occur much, much less frequently than we previously believed. It comes down to a better understanding of quantum fluctuations. You know, there's a caricature of theism that says that theism is an excuse to stop thinking. You say that, oh, there's a problem, I don't need to solve it because God will solve it for me. That's clearly false, because many theists think very carefully and very rigorously about many problems. But sometimes there's an element of truth to it. This is an example. You're faced with the Boltzmann brain problem and go, I get out of that by saying that God created a single universe. That might have stopped you from thinking about the physics in a deeper way and discovering interesting facts like this. Fifth, and most importantly, theism fails as an explanation. Even if you think the universe is finely tuned and you don't think that naturalism can solve it, theism certainly does not solve it. If you thought it did, if you played the game honestly, what you would say is, here is the universe that I expect to exist under theism. I will compare it to the data and see if it fits. What kind of universe would we expect? And I would claim that over and over again, the universe we expect matches the predictions of naturalism, not theism. So the amount of tuning, if you thought that the physical parameters of our universe were tuned in order to allow life to exist, you would expect enough tuning, but not too much. Under naturalism, a physical mechanism could far over-tune by an incredibly large amount that has nothing to do with the existence of life, and that is exactly what we observe. For example, the entropy of the early universe is much, 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 much lower than it needs to be to allow for life. You would expect under theism that the particles and parameters of particle physics would be enough to allow life to exist and have some structure that was designed for some reason, whereas under naturalism, you'd expect them to be kind of random and a mess. Guess what? They are kind of random and a mess. You would expect under theism life to play a special role in the universe. Under naturalism, you'd expect life to be very insignificant. I hope I don't need to tell you, life is very insignificant as far as the universe is concerned. Here's a photograph from the Hubble Space Telescope of a few hundred out of the hundreds of billions of galaxies in our observable universe. The theistic explanation for cosmological fine-tuning asks you to look at this picture and say, I know why it's like that. It's because I was going to be here, or we were going to be here. But there is nothing in our experience of the universe that justifies the kind of flattering story we like to tell about ourselves. In fact, I would argue that the failure of theism to explain the fine-tuning of the universe is paradigmatic. It helps understand the other ways in which theism fails to be a better theory than naturalism. What you should be doing over and over again is comparing the predictions or expectations under theism to under naturalism. You find that over and over again, naturalism wins. And I'm going to zoom through these. It's not the individual arguments that are important, it's the accumulated effect. If theism were really true, there's no reason for God to be hard to find. He should be perfectly obvious, whereas in naturalism, you might expect people believe in God, but the evidence to be thin on the ground. Under theism, you'd expect that religious beliefs should be universal. There's no reason for God to give special messages to this or that primitive tribe thousands of years ago. Why not give it to anyone? Whereas under naturalism, you'd expect different religious beliefs inconsistent with each other to grow up under different local conditions. Under theism, you'd expect religious doctrines to last a long time in a stable way. Under naturalism, you'd expect them to adapt to social conditions. Under theism, you'd expect the moral teachings of religion to be transcendent, progressive, sexism is wrong, slavery is wrong. Under naturalism, you'd expect that they reflect, once again, local mores, sometimes good rules, sometimes not so good. You'd expect the sacred texts under theism to give us interesting information. Tell us about the germ theory of disease. Tell us to wash our hands before we have dinner. Under naturalism, you'd expect that sacred text to be a mishmash, some really good parts, some poetic parts, and some boring parts and mythological parts. Under theism, you'd expect biological forms to be designed. Under naturalism, they would derive from the twists and turns of evolutionary history. Under theism, minds should be independent of bodies. Under naturalism, your personality should change if you're injured, tired, or you haven't had your cup of coffee yet. Under theism, you'd expect that maybe you can explain the problem of evil. God wants us to have free will, but there shouldn't be random suffering in the universe. Life should be essentially just. And at the end of the day, in theism, you basically expect the universe to be perfect. Under naturalism, it should be kind of a mess. This is very strong empirical evidence. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but I can explain all of that. I know you can explain all, so can I. It's not hard to come up with ex post facto justifications for why God would have done it that way. Why is it not hard? Because theism is not well defined. That's what computer scientists call a bug, not a feature. Immanuel Kant famously said, there will never be an Isaac Newton for a blade of grass. In other words, sure, you can find some physical explanation for the motion of the planets, but never for something as exquisitely organized and complex as a biological organism. Except, of course, that Charles Darwin then went and did exactly that. We can paraphrase Dr. Craig's message as saying, there will never be an Isaac Newton for the cosmos. But everything we know about the history of science and the current state of physics says we should be much more optimistic than that. Thank you.
All
Okay.
right. A lot of stuff to take in there. I think this is probably one of the best opening statements I have ever heard anyone give. What do you guys think?
Yes, it was fine. So I generally agree with this guy, with the exception of a few statements that would, well, not so accurate. So generally, I agree that abstract deism is not falsificable. So you cannot test of it. So it is pointless to generally discuss about it.
Trio debunk. Sorry,
Yes?
but you're a little bit quiet, and there seems to be air puffs in the microphone, putting static over over it too.
Really?
Well, that's a lot better. But yeah,
Okay. I will. No, it's micro just. So, must I repeat that?
no, I was able to follow.
Okay, so guys, you must not confuse abstractly with actually critical code, because about the critical code we have Bible like word for him, so it is more like it can be falsified and test if it is true or false. That's what I must say. And so I agree that if things would be true, it is actually a little bit strange that the God have delivered us the message like he had did that first the Sumerians know these myths, then Jews, and then Christians, and now there is till now there is discussion about some important stuffs in Christical beliefs. So first you must define in what exactly you believe there, if you are a real Christian. Okay. So, but a few statements like if theism is true, God must be easy to find. I don't know. So this statement was like in general false cause for me. It does not mean that if theism is true, God must be something easy to find or okay, and what about multiverse? I find the multiverse is it's just a theory now, and it's too early to talk about that because it cannot be falsified or proved. So I think that was first statement for me for now. Okay, thanks.
And Creotobunk, may I double check? Are you an atheist?
I am sort of agnostic. I am sort of, I don't know. I could agree that it can be something, but I pretty much sure it is not Christ God. Because Christ God is maybe falsified according to the information in the Bible, and it appears what it appears. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was on mute. I know I'm making noise here. I apologize.
Not a problem. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to take in from Dr. Sean Carroll's arguments.
Yeah, I took furious notes, so I'm prepared for talking about any of it.
Sure. Obviously, would disagree with the conclusion of Dr. Carroll's arguments, but just kind of curiosity, where do you stand on the scientific issues such as Big Bang cosmology, theory of evolution, etc.? Oh, by the way, welcome, Gavin. Hey, Gavin, how are you?
Hi. How's my sound, David?
Your sound is good.
Fantastic. Everyone.
Okay, so well, the first thing I think should be addressed is that all of that was mostly all of that was discussion of science with no regard to philosophy. So it seemed to me that Carroll did not even address the philosophical necessities at all. So I'm not sure how William Lane Craig is going to respond to that lack of address. But I really don't agree with you, David. It seemed to me that given the scope of the topic, he missed the topic. Then when he did try to discuss the philosophical matters such as God should be obvious, well, it is written, and I know for a fact that God is obvious because of Jesus Christ on the cross. Theism is not well defined. Well, Christ is the exact definition of theism, so it's very well defined. And then this idea that it should be transcendent, well, the justice expressed in Torah and reiterated by Christ that he paid the price because we defy that justice, that is a transcendent justice. And germs, etc., they are surprisingly addressed in Torah, given how ancient it is. They're not the focus at all, of course, but There's definitely some stuff in Torah that protects them from germs and things. Mind's independent of bodies. The mind relates to the spirit and the body. I see how for someone like Carol that would be a bit hard to comprehend, but it's definitely in there. Yeah, some of the other points, I don't want to necessarily dig up every little thing he said. Let me see. Oh yeah, and then the scripture also addresses why he chose a specific tribe for his message and stuff. So it seems like everything he did to try to address theism directly was just a miss. So it's left with just the science side of things.
Yeah. Thank you, Zach. So why don't we start by saying, like, what exactly? There are over 45,000 denominations of Christianity alone, and the Christian denominations don't even agree on the canon of Scripture. So, don't you think that's a problem for your position?
No, my position is based on the person of Christ, so that is not a problem at all whatsoever.
All right, sure. So, which church would you say would be the true church, if any?
The one universal spiritual church of people who truly put their trust in Christ.
Okay, so not necessarily one denomination individually.
Yeah, I definitely could never subscribe to a single denomination. That would be division, which is what the word heresy means. It means division. And yeah, I just can't even entertain that.
All right, sure. Gavin, do you have any thoughts?
Sure. I was listening to Sean Carroll. It seems to me that life either is due to natural processes or an intelligent mind. Can we agree on that? Can the whole room agree on that life is either due to natural processes or an intelligent mind?
I think that would be a reasonable dilemma, because either God exists or he does not exist via the law of excluded middle. So I think that's a reasonable assumption to say, okay, either life is due to God or natural process.
Yeah.
Yes, there is. pretty strong
I agree, David. Sorry. You go.
Okay,
You go.
no problem. There is pretty strong evidence about general, so mainstream hypothesis about life, about abiogenesis, creation of life in sort of marks like streams in early Earth. So guys, you just need to Google and find good scientific videos about that. So, thanks.
I agree with David that God either does exist or does not exist. It's a dichotomy. It's black and white.
Correct.
The difficulty I have though, and I'm not trying to be a contrarian, guys. I'm really respecting the discussion we're having here.
Not a problem.
The problem I have though is that science, up until right now, has not been able to demonstrate that life is due to natural processes.
Well,
as I said again, read good scientific books about that. And generally, if you talk about God exists, you must define exactly what God you claim to exist, and how the existence of the God can be falsified and proved by.
Okay,
people.
well,
Okay?
for a start, let's eliminate that red herring, and we're talking about the Christian God.
Okay.
So again, there's nothing. Science has not demonstrated that life is caused by natural processes.
Okay, so I'm not pretty good in this point, but do you know that your blood is salty? Yes?
Sorry?
Do you know that your blood is salty? Like there is amount of salt in your blood, and so the pH level. Why do you think it is so?
Look, with all due respect, science is no closer to creating life via natural processes than it was in 1952. That is a fact.
All right, if I could kind of jump in here a little bit. Because, of course, in a way, you're right. We have not yet discovered the exact process, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay by me. Science is an ever evolving process of trying to figure out how the world works. In fact, a recent 2019 article in the journal Nature, lab-based primordial soup yields RNA bases. So once you get the basic building blocks for self-replication, you have an unlimited, really almost an unlimited possibility via mutations and natural selection. Now, Gavin, just out of curiosity, are you do you accept the theory of evolution, or are you a young Earth creationist?
No, I'm not a young Earth creationist, David.
Okay, so I guess you would consider yourself like an old Earth creationist.
No, I'm aware of the arguments for young Earth creation, and I'm aware of the arguments for old Earth creation. However, I don't I don't stake my salvation on either hill. I'm not prepared to die on either hill because it's not a salvific issue.
Okay,
It's interesting. I find it really interesting. It's of great interest, but I'm not going to die on the hill of old Earth creationism or young Earth creationism.
Interesting. So we do know that the development of life and the development of biodiversity is 100% natural. And we do know that stars and planets form naturally.
Wait, how are we using the word "no" here? Now, I personally definitely do not see any scientific evidence whatsoever for common ancestry.
Okay, can we please make a narrow point so we focus on one topic about common ancestry and evolution? So we took some very specific questions and discuss that. Maybe this would be.
I would honestly prefer we don't, because we have channels that spend hours and hours addressing those details. So I'd rather just agree to disagree and everyone voice their perspective here. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and that's
Okay,
fair.
So I would say there is lots of traces that we see in universe development, like beginning from living stars and galaxies and ending with our salty blood, and our blood is salty because the bacteria what initially were development in salty waters. So they have that level in what level was there 3 million years ago and so. And like that, we generally mainstream science see a lot of traces about it, and that's why we then take conclusions that all stuff development naturally. Thanks.
Right. Yeah, sure. So this is one thing I like about open mic, is that there are so many various discussions and ways for it to kind of go and all of that. So, Nicholas, do you want to continue the discussion or evolution, or kind of try and go back to the Dr. Carroll debates?
Well, yeah, regarding, yeah, I'd rather not really continue the discussion with evolution personally. The concept that our salt level being the same as the ocean, if I'm following you correctly, Creodebunk.
Our salt level is exact in those places where first bacteria were initially developing. So, and it is too broad what I actually said. That if you want, I can research exact material later and then give you. Anyway, all you guys can research for the info by yourself.
Can I jump in there, please?
In a moment, I just want to finish my sentence that was interrupted.
Okay, you go.
So,
you go, Nicholas.
Yeah. So I was just saying that is an interesting concept. And to be honest, Creodebunk, with the static pops and the quietness, it's pretty hard to follow details of what you're saying. And then The accent is part of what's difficult too, except if your microphone was perfect, I'd have no problem with the accent.
Right. I would agree. I'm having a hard time following you as well, Credo. Tom's share actually in the comment section related to that. As someone says, Nicholas, you said based on the person of Christ. So what if someone never heard of Jesus? What were the people in the Americas, for example, doing for the hundreds of years and thousands of years between Jesus and the time they made contact with Europeans?
It depends on which people group you're talking about. If you ask what they were doing, there was human sacrifice, there was cannibalism, there was war for selfish advantage, there was also peace among some of the people, I presume. So it was a whole kaleidoscope of different things. If we're talking salvifically, these things are addressed in scripture, such as Paul mentions that when those who are among the nations not having the Torah, when they do by nature the things that are written in the Torah, they become a Torah unto themselves. Or there's also the parable of the father with his two sons, where one son says, when his father requests that they work in the field, one son says, I will, and the other one says, I will not. The one who said he would work in the field actually does not work in the field. The one who said he would not work in the field, well, he actually does. Which one did the will of his father?
The one who actually worked in the field.
Yeah. So that plays into it too. So Christ judges everyone rightly according to what they actually had available and according to their actual their deeper character and things of that nature.
All right. So in that case, why do we even need Jesus or Christianity at all? I mean, the obvious question is, I'm guessing you would believe in sola fide, faith alone. So if you don't believe in Jesus but live an overall decent life, you still go to hell, rather than someone who believes in Jesus and goes to heaven, even though they might be an overall bad person.
Well, we must remember that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And so he's a lot more than just a story to be recognized as true. And so if anyone trusts the truth, then they are trusting Jesus. And if someone's not trusting the truth, then they're not trusting Jesus. And religion doesn't change that. But there's no advantage to not knowing that Jesus is the truth. In fact, if someone starts putting in their brain that they want to think Jesus is not the truth for some reason, then they're really going to get twisted about what's true or not in there. So all who are of the truth do hear his voice. So anyone who is presented with Jesus and is given a good presentation of Jesus and does not recognize that that's the truth, that reflects on the person who can't recognize it, that they are not of the truth.
May I ask something?
Yeah.
Okay, so may I ask Nicholas, do you think it is fair that at least some Christians have a version of a Bible that you may not play or hear music if this music do not worship Jesus?
Yeah, I don't like to listen to music that doesn't worship Jesus. So I find that agreeable.
Yeah. By the way, Zach asked another question for you, Nicholas. Except the Bible specifically says that the only way to God is through Jesus. Also, the only unforgivable thing in the Bible is to not worship him.
Well, the only unforgivable thing is to vilify the Spirit of truth, and or the Holy Spirit, the sacred Spirit, that Spirit which is set apart. And so to vilify, you see, Spirit has a lot to do with motivation. That's where we get the word inspiration from. We have the word spirit in the word inspiration,
Right.
just like we have the word spirit in the word respiration. Now, respiration is actually soul, it's breath. Inspiration is actually spirit. And that's why Jesus blew on the apostles to give his motivation, his spirit, his life to the apostles. And so, motivation, if we want to get to a more practical level that makes it easier for non-believers to understand, or even for believers to understand, I think associating motivation with spirit is important. So there's the motivation of honesty. I'm motivated by honesty instead of my ego, that kind of thing. And then I believe that is the same motivation that is set apart as the sacred motivation. But it actually specifically says, Zach is very incorrect, because Christ said that all manner of blasphemy, that's vilification, will be forgiven, including blasphemy against both the Father and the Son.
But not
So,
the Holy Spirit.
But
So from what I
not the Holy Spirit. Yeah. So to say that worshiping Jesus is what's that not worshiping Jesus is what's not forgivable, that's specifically against what the scripture says. Actually, he specifically says that can be forgiven.
Right. From what I understand, the unforgivable sin was only pretty much able to be committed in the time of Jesus, where they claimed that Jesus got his powers from the devil. So, in my opinion, that was what was considered the blasphemy of the Holy Spirits.
Yeah, people say that a lot, and that might be because they don't want people to be afraid that they're unforgivable. Now, I used to be a different person. That person vilified the spirit of truth. That person was unforgivable. That person was cast into the lake of fire and can never exist again. And now I have been promised that I will live forever. So that's the way I view it.
Okay. Gavin, any thoughts?
Yeah. When I was listening to Sean Carroll, I thought the way he compared science to the Bible, I thought it was quite silly. Yeah, really silly. And the reason is this: the Bible is not a scientific textbook, but the main thread of the entire Bible is spiritual redemption. And this seems to be missed by atheists and people who hold to a naturalistic worldview.
Okay.
Well, I can stick up for Sean Carroll on that one a little bit, because he is addressing the arguments that he's expecting from William Lane Craig. And those are the cosmological argument and the
teleological argument.
Yeah, teleological argument. I was imagining the L in the wrong place when I was trying to say it. But yeah, and I think he, just the fact that there are philosophical necessities and that Sean Carroll had no answers to those. He just pretended the philosophical necessities are not an issue for him. That's where I think he failed at his attempt.
Right. Now, I will say that I really encourage everyone to actually watch the full debates, because I think it was a very insightful, and I think one of Dr. Craig and Dr. Sean Carroll's absolute best debates, and probably maybe even one of the best debates of all time.
Yeah, and I'll try to take the time to watch the whole thing sometime soon. Another one I really like, it's not a debate, but a discussion between Cosmic Skeptic and William Lane Craig about the cosmological argument.
Yeah, I saw that video, but I never actually watched it. I love the Cosmic Skeptic. I think he is definitely a brilliant young man, and I've learned a lot from the little that I've watched from his videos.
And he strikes me as very honest. Like, he was willing to honestly follow wherever philosophy was like taking him, you know. So then he kept pushing back and asking these really good questions, and even coming up with I think he came up with one or two questions that William Lane Craig was not ready for. But in the end, it almost sounded like Cosmic Skeptic was going to have to become a theist. And so it's a very, very fascinating discussion. And I should check out his channel and see if he has done an update regarding how he has reconciled how that conversation ended.
Yeah, I think Dr. William Lane Craig is one of the most brilliant theologians alive in our day. I have immense respect for him. I don't agree with him, but he's a brilliant. You can't deny that he is a brilliant orator and he's a brilliant person.
Yeah, and I also have plenty of disagreement with William Lane Craig too, but a lot of respect for him as a philosopher. I think he's more perfect as a philosopher than he is as a Christian, because some of his trust and where he leans and stuff isn't exactly focused on Christ himself. But that's also his way of being an apologist out to others and stuff. So I'm not trying to be judgmental, but that's my honest assessment of him.
Yeah, and I would agree.
And so when he talks about no beginning, this is the biggest philosophical issue I see is the problem of infinite regress. If there's an infinite past, then we never get here.
Right, and that's always one thing. I don't think our mind can possibly wrap around the concept of infinity, either infinity, minus infinity to positive infinity. I don't think we can fully grasp that, because even with theism, God must have existed from an eternity past before the universe, before he decided to start the universe.
Well, that's a bit of a misnomer, because eternity past is a figure of speech, but it's actually a timelessness. And so timelessness does not have this problem.
Okay, interesting. So what do you mean by that?
That God's existence transcends time, is outside of time, is without necessity of time. He's inside and outside time, but his ontological foundation is outside of time.
Interesting. So yeah, well, technically speaking, before the Big Bang, there was no time at all, which is also a very difficult time to, very difficult idea to wrap our brains around.
Yeah, and when Sean Carroll cited singularity implies eternal, as in an ever time, you know, like instead of a non-time, he's referring to an ever time, a time that goes on forever. The singularity can also be said to imply God, but singularity really comes to a point of non-function in some sense. So I don't think we can get to a singularity and say it specifically implies eternal, nor that it specifically implies God. I think at that point we have philosophical necessities to address.
Yep. Hey, Org is in the house. Hey, Org, how are you doing?
Yellow.
Hello, my friend. Good to see you.
Shalom,
Hey,
shalom,
continue.
Morgan. Hey,
Hey,
shalom.
Gavin. Hey, continue your discussion, Nicholas. It's interesting to hear about WLC.
I finished that statement just now. That I think the singularity brings us to a point that we have philosophical questions at that point, and
No,
not scientific ones.
Yeah, it's. I don't think science will necessarily discover the exact origins of the universe. Maybe I'm too much of a pessimist, but it's definitely a difficult question to solve.
I'd say it's a reasonable assertion to take on that, Neff. I mean, then again, you all kind of assuming this like unknown science needs to exist for us to answer the unknown and all that other like sci-fi mumbo jumbo, you know?
Yep.
So it's possible we can know those things. It's possible we never will. That's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, but of course, there's no. Of course, saying kind of sitting or throwing up our hands and saying "I give up" is definitely not an acceptable answer in science.
Exactly.
Yes, but we are pretty sure what we know and what we do not know. And if we do not know something, we do not invent other things to explain that.
Well, God, the Christian God wasn't invented. The theistic position is that as mere mortals, we can never understand the mind of God. We cannot have that type of comprehension.
Actually, we can prove if some facts mentioned in Bible, like I said before, is true or false. And from that point of view, we can to test it a little bit. Is the Christianity version true or false?
Yeah. Hey,
That we can do.
Sandy's in the house. Hey, Sandy.
Hey, David, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well.
Good.
And now we have Smokey Saints. Hey, Smokey, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Just
Smokey.
have to switch my
here.
audio there. Yeah,
It is so
sorry.
good to see you.
Good to see you guys. How you doing? I wasn't sure if I was jumping in too late. Saw the invite. Was doing a few things today.
Oh, no,
Can't hear
you're
Smokey.
just on time. Yeah, so earlier we were talking about the Dr. Carroll debate with William Lane Craig, and so we've kind of been exploring and going down a little bit of rabbit holes. But since you're here, I think I got to kind of set focus because we have been talking about this kind of off and on different streams, and we can talk about the logical fallacy that is the appeal to authority fallacy.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you'd like to discuss that a bit. Not a problem.
Yeah, sure. So there's a fantastic site called Logically Fallacious that has.
I've seen it. Yeah.
By the way, I think you're echoing.
Oh, am I? Hold on. You know what?
Hey,
Let me bow out and come back. Hold on.
Okay.
I gotta mute my mic real quick. My kid got up, so I don't want you guys listening to complaining. So I'll
Okay.
be paying attention, but I'm gonna just mute out.
The gentleman that's got the nice accent, did you say that science can prove that God exists or not, or has proven that God exists or not? Did I hear that right?
Science can prove that some facts mentioned in Bible are true or false, like when they did animals and when did life started, was there worldwide flood, or for example, we can prove historical facts if it is true that some events like presence Jew in Egypt were true, so like archaeologically, and we can it's also true culturologically and archaeologically if it is true that it's message of God, like we know historically that before the Yiddish time we were like Sumerian civilization with some myths that it has and some Hammurabi laws written on the stone and etc. So it's like that we can prove this. So it's
Hey, Credo, could you move your mic up or down a little bit? You're breathing into it, and we can't understand you.
Yeah.
sorry.
But anyway,
There you go.
Smokey Saint is back, so I'm just going to share this real quick. The appeal to authority fallacy.
Sure. And by the way, am I still echoing, or is it okay?
No, you're perfect now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, sure. So here we go. The appeal to authority fallacy. Description: insisting that a claim is true simply because a valid authority or expert in the issue said that it was true. without any other supporting evidence offered. And the logical form, according to person one, who is in the expert of the issue Y is true, therefore Y is true. I love the example that they have given here. Richard Dawkins, an evolutionary biologist and perhaps the foremost expert in the field, says that evolution is true. Therefore, it is true. So this is a type of argumentation that I've been really saying, hey, this is... you just cannot do this in argumentation. You got to give the actual evidence behind the consensus before you can use the consensus as an argument.
I gotta thank you, David. The Stanford definition actually says that if they are a valid expert, it's not a fallacy, and that's just incorrect. The thing is that if people want to agree, well, this person's an expert, so it's fair to refer to them. That's a fair agreement between two people having a conversation. It just does not meet the same standard as what would be considered logical proof. So that's why it's a logical fallacy.
Right, exactly. Though there is a legitimate difference between deferring to an authority issue with the appeal to authority fallacy. The fallacy is an error in reasoning. Dismissing the counsel of legitimate experts and authorities turn good skepticism into denialism. The appeal to authority is a fallacy in argumentation, but deferring to an authority is a reliable heuristic that we all use virtually every day on the issue of relatively little importance. There is always a chance that any authority can be wrong. That's why the critical thinker accepts the facts provisionally. It is not at all unreasonable or an error in reasoning to accept information as provisionally true by a credible authority. So that said, if a physicist starts telling me about quantum physics, I'm going to definitely trust that person because they know the stuff in the field. However, again, when you're actually debating topics like evolution or climate change or even vaccines or anything, you can't just say the authorities say this, therefore this is true. You have to explain the actual evidence that leads the experts to agree.
So I got a question on that then for you.
Go right ahead.
Can you hear me all right? I had to take my mic off.
I hear you fine.
All right, sweet.
Yeah. If I may just request real quick, David, I'd like that link if you'll put it inside chat.
Oh yeah, definitely. Fantastic.
I do have something to share too at some point, David, on this topic, but it's not a rush. It's not a rush. So,
sure, go right ahead.
My thing was sort of a clarification, right? You're talking about a subject neither of you are very good at. You say so-and-so company of experts says this. That's not good enough. Yeah, no problem with that. You have to go into the explanation a bit, sure. At what point do you think it's reasonable to stop explaining and just say, okay, this explanation now fits? I mean, we run into the issue a lot, right?
Yeah, and Smokey say go right ahead, and I just shared your screen.
Oh, and feel free to answer his question first, Neff, if you want.
Right. So again, I guess it's all of depending on the topic, and it kind of varies or whatever. But I'm not going to doubt an expert in the field generally, unless I'm giving a good reason to. Of course, a good example is whenever Dr. Dan is giving his presentations, I'm going to pretty much accept everything he says with the face value that he is an authority in the field.
Right.
Yep.
I wanted to share this because this is something to consider too when we're gauging, what can even be considered as consensus being put forward from the scientific community. I'll tell you guys where this article is. This is the Spiritual Anthropologist, Fallacy of Scientific Consensus. But I found this part really interesting. This factoid. It says, using the entire Scopus database, we estimated that there are 15,153,100 1,700 publishing scientists, distinct author identifiers in the period 1996 to 2011. However, only 150,608, less than 1% of them, have published something in each and every year in this 16-year period. Uninterrupted continuous presence, UCP, in the literature. This small core of scientists with UCP far more cited than others, and they account for 41.7% of all papers in the same period and 87.1% of all papers with greater than 1,000 citations in the same period. And to round it up, basically the work of roughly 1% of all publishing scientists accounted for 41% of papers published between 96 and 2011. From this information alone, we know that any analysis of published articles is going to be skewed heavily towards the bias of the 1% of the publishing community.
Right. Of course, part of that has to be dealing with how insanely difficult it is to even get in the peer-reviewed literature. By the way, Speed of Sound of Gravity is here.
Hey. So Smokey, on that topic you just put up, do you think that has to do with first authorship, second authorship, or what do you think on that?
What do you mean?
Well, like a lot of papers, like if for example, people that aren't straight up natural PhDs, right? Well, actually, let me rephrase this. Most papers have more than one author, but like the top guy in the department tends to get top billing a lot of times.
Right.
Maybe like 5. So you could have the department chair will publish 8 papers. He'll be the top because some of them are for postdocs,
right?
Some of them are for PhD students, what have you. So that could kind of inflate his numbers periodically speaking.
Well, but this is talking about actual like people available for publication, which is pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, and the thing is too is like if you, let's say there was, say in that instance that you just described, a scientist or a guy that discovered something that would challenge or disrupt what the accepted theory is of the main publisher, in your instance, the main academic, you know, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that's going to get passed. I mean, even for political reasons alone, you know, because the thing is, no matter what's presented, you could always say, well, it's incomplete, not enough evidence. I mean, I guess what I would say is we should not discount the fact that these are people too, with lives, careers, and certainly politics in their offices that we should consider. This is why we can't just appeal to consensuses. We need to look at the actual arguments. We need to look what's being said. And when it comes down to a whole bunch of people believe this, so you should too, go screw yourself. That's not how I want to operate.
Exactly. A Christian or theist could say 99% of theologians say God exists, therefore God exists. It's the same type of logical error in reasoning. And I would agree. I would actually say that creationists do that too. Creationists publish their own journals in which they flat out say they refuse to publish anything that goes against.
Yeah, and what if they were the mainstream? What if the shoe was on the other foot? You know, it wouldn't be fair on that side either. The idea, we have to see the argumentation and what it actually resides to. People can have any number of justifications. And let me tell you something. For my years in the executive world, I'm going to tell you something. I met with a lot of lawyers, a lot of business executives, a lot of doctors, a lot of consultants. I'm going to tell you something. Most people in a field are probably pretty much garbage at it. That's just the nature of the beast. This is why you hear people when they're shopping for someone to use, like for law or real estate, you'll hear them say, do you know a good lawyer? Do you know a good real estate agent? Because they know, and deep down we all know, that a predominant number of people in any industry or profession might just have gotten there by luck or fortune or distinctive good graces or God knows what, and they might just be garbage at it. They might be hating it. And this is just the nature of the world. And I'm not saying that like most scientists are garbage, but I'm saying like in every industry I've ever interacted with, there's a big chunk of people that are just trash at it, that just skate by doing whatever they can do. And then there's a segment of the group that is really, really into it, loves it, and puts their heart and soul into it. And that's just how it is in every field.
Yeah, and Zach pointed out, and that's why you have publishing standards and the experiments have to be repeatable. Of course, the consensus doesn't end at publishing, and that's a good thing. And have you ever heard of a website called Retraction Watch?
No,
Watch. I can tell what that is by the name of it.
Yeah, I mean it's self-explanatory, but no,
Yeah.
I've not familiarized myself with it.
Yeah, it's pretty much a blog that talks about retractions and make sure that they get publicized and stuff like that, and they keep track of the authors who have a long history of getting retracted. There are some people who get published and they have like at least 5 or 6 different papers that's been retracted in the past. And
So it kind of gives you like a rundown of like their track record, like or something like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and recently they've been keeping track of all the papers that were retracted on the coronavirus. So far, we have at least 33 to 35 papers on the coronavirus that has since been retracted since publishing.
Interesting.
Well, then for me, the question has more to do with percentage there, but I do want to get sort of back to Orge's focus of his question, because I know a perfect example of that is Dr. James Tour. And I like him because everything he does is tech. It's not theory. So it's really irrefutable and very, very testable. But his name goes on the paper of anything his teams do. And of course, his teams are not getting those results without his leadership. But some of those experiments and some of that he might not have a whole lot directly to do with. So I think that maybe is more what Orge was asking about, is that like James Tour has been cited over 107,000 times, but then the individuals on each of the actual little teams maybe have only been cited 1,000 times each, 10,000 times each, depending on the person.
Yeah, and I will give Dr.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah, Nick.
Right.
Oh,
And I would say that Dr. Tour is without a doubt a brilliant man, and he should be respected for the work he's done in his field. Professor Dave Explains actually did a really good, about 45-minute long video refuting his claims on abiogenesis. You should definitely take a look at that.
By the way,
I watched that video. It's garbage, and Dave is very deceitful on it in multiple places, which is a video that I'm going to do exposing his deceptions. And Standing exposed the scientific errors, brought in an expert to expose that. So to be honest, that video that Professor Dave did was absolute garbage in every way.
Yeah, amen.
All right, interesting. I'll have to go and research what you said. I have not yet watched Standing for Truth's video on Professor Dave and Dr. Tour. That is definitely going to be on my watch list.
Okay, Nicholas, I really want to see your video about it and what you will tell there.
What are you asking, Creative Bunk? It got quiet.
I would really like to see your video about this video with Professor David Express and this other guy.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I'm waiting for it.
I'll link Standing's video. Not that I'm trying to appeal to authority there, but just we're having a quick discussion about it. But the video I'm going to make about how it was deceptive, that one doesn't exist yet. So I can link my channel too. That way, when it does come out, you'll be ready for it.
Yes, super. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, and I guess I would say, and this is kind of an interesting thing you brought up, Orge, earlier. You were talking about how like the main person in the field or in the building or in the wing or whatever in academia could get credit for it, and I don't think that's how it works. That's how the citations work. Like someone in the department will write the paper, they'll cite the main person, but the main person isn't going to be the person claiming to have written the paper. You see what I'm saying? Like, right. I mean, and that was in that article, like 87% of the papers, had these people cited greater than 1,000 times. It's, I mean, you're talking about like a pretty massive spectrum spread. And by the way, even in other industries, I'll tell you this too. A lot of people don't know this. Real estate. Like 90% of the business in a real estate area, geographical region is always done by 1%, about 1% of the actual real estate agents there. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of how things kind of go, and it's just kind of the nature of hierarchy, how we function. We always, manifest those top dogs. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's hard to knock them down once they're there.
Smokey,
Right.
my point was sort of anecdotal. The
Okay.
department chair. Well, my point comes from my anecdotal personal history with research, in that when I was working in the lab, we published plenty of papers, but the department chair was always at least first, second, or third, because he kind of played an integral part in everything.
Right.
So we may have 5 people on there. He may be 2, even though time-wise he did the least amount of work. He definitely did a lot of work in structuring and kind of running the thing, right? So
Right.
that's my take on it. And of course, that's not all takes every single scientist ever, but that's just what I've seen.
Orge, was that when you were a student?
I was a student, as I did research as a student, and did research after I graduated.
Yeah, well, it's publish or die. So obviously those guys will get the students will do the work, and they will get the credit. So, but other professors, if they don't publish,
no one at university works harder than a postdoc. No one.
Yeah, no, I got you, brother.
And may I ask you, Orge, did you feel
Can I get agreement?
Did you feel it was fair, Orge, when the department head's name was on every paper?
Oh, very much. Because he was in everything. I mean, in order to get at that level, you do kind of just need to do everything. So.
Yeah, and I do agree. What's good about that is there's a reliability behind those people, which can bring a reliability to their whole department. And with like the website David Neff mentioned, that we can check how much is retracted. If their retractions are a very small percentage and they're for sensible reasons, not for bad work, then that's going to be someone that seems reliable.
Right. I know there's a lot of articles that were retracted simply for a couple word choice usage and translation errors. Recently, there was a couple years ago a big fuss in the intelligent design creation evolution blogosphere about a paper that was retracted for using the phrase like intelligent designer or God or whatever like that. And in reality, it was just a poor translation on the part of the scientists, and it was done. The peer review process was obviously missed during the peer review process.
You would have to go with what Smokey was saying, David, in that there is an inherent bias in the intelligent design propagation of papers out there, and I'm looking right at my own. I just wrote my dissertation. That Stephen Meyer got slammed in 2004 for a peer-reviewed scientific article. That he published.
Can I get
Gavin wants to say something?
Can I get agreement? Yeah, can I get agreement from the room on just 2 points? 2 points, please. First point is this: up until right this second, science has not been able to create, build, make life in the laboratory.
Well, of course.
Correct.
Of course. I mean,
yes, not yet.
Okay. Yeah. The second point is, therefore, is it fair to say that life and the universe is not the result of naturalistic processes?
Absolutely no.
I would agree. Yeah, absolutely not. And there is a reason for this. And Higgs, but great.
Well, I would say based on that agreement alone, that's not enough.
Yeah, that's not quite enough.
I do think we know enough about chemistry that we actually do. We only have one hypothesis for the origin of life, which is a creator. But that's not based on simply the fact that we've not replicated origins yet.
Yeah. So, you know what? For example, do you know when the Higgs boson particle was actually discovered? Do you happen to know when that was discovered?
I don't think you do, but it was in the 2000s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was discovered in the 2000s.
Yeah, but it was actually predicted all the way back in the 1960s.
It was hypothesized, yeah.
That was hypothesized right then based upon the mathematical and the theoretical framework that they had. And this is strong evidence for the hypothesis or the framework that they were discussing, and I can't remember all of the details about that. And we're going to find this Higgs boson particle, and 60 years later we discover it. So simply because we haven't found it yet does not mean we should just give up and say therefore God. Just like,
well, I think that's kind of a fallacy that's levied in a lot of atheist circles, unfortunately, David, that we just stick God. I mean, the God of the gaps fallacy is now atheists have to respond to the point of absurdity that, number one, we haven't found it, and number two, that we don't do any scientific research, which is the absolute wrong way to look at things. I mean, if you look at Meyer, the Discovery Institute, these guys are all PhDs in their fields, and they are working scientifically to explain most of this. And as Smokey pointed out earlier, there is an inherent bias in the scientific community to even explore or anything that is intelligent design based, and that's part of the problem. So it kind of drives me nuts that people just say God did it, and that's the God of the gaps fallacy, which is fallacious itself. And it's a service to the rest of the scientists that are actually exploring a lot of these things.
Hey Leo, how are you?
Doing good.
Hey, I gotta put my kid down, so I'll be right back. Don't ask me any questions for a little bit.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I just wanted to repeat again that we have some indirect signs of abiogenesis, and some versions how abiogenesis could take place.
Hey, Credo, you're cutting in and out there, brother.
Yep. Hey Leo, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good.
Hi, Leo.
I am sorry, by the way, that I couldn't do it last night. Just had a couple
that's
things
fine.
come up.
That's fine.
So, Leo, any thoughts? Anything you want to add to the discussion?
You made a good point when you brought up the thing about the Higgs boson, and I wanted to add to that. General relativity was formulated in 1915, but it wasn't confirmed until 1917. Back in 1917, Einstein knew that his theory predicted gravitational waves, predicted black holes, and there were a couple other things I can't think right off the top of my head that general relativity predicted. Black holes weren't discovered until 50s. Gravitational waves weren't discovered until 2015.
Right, and that just shows you. And what I love about these predictions is that when you make a scientific prediction, when you make a theory, and this prediction is confirmed decades, even centuries later, I think that is very.
Can I ask a question?
And another thing is that intelligent design has never done that. Ever.
I agree.
Not once. Hasn't made that. That's why there's not a bias against it. It has no explanatory or predictive power.
Exactly.
It's useless. It can still be true. It can be 100% true. But right now, it's useless because it does not explain anything and it does not predict anything. It is wild conjecture that cannot be confirmed through laboratory experiment and does not.
Hold on a second, Gavin. Would you please not overtalk people on David's channel?
Yeah, hold on. Okay, I have a rule now. If you start talking over top of someone, I'm going to mute you. I'm sorry, I don't want to do this, but Leo, you had the mic, and then Smoky Saints, you had a couple things you wanted to say. So Leo, you finish, and then Smoky Saints, you go from there.
Yeah, the whole universe could 100% be intelligent design. We could grant that. It's still useless. It does not it has no explanatory and has no predictive power. And that is why science doesn't use it. It's literally no different. It carries no more explanatory or predictive power than asserting that fairies did it, or that dragons did it, or that leprechauns did it, or that Santa Claus did it. Because it doesn't have any explanatory or predictive power at all.
Okay, Smokey, you had some things to respond.
Yeah, science can only deal with and look for and appeal to naturalistic mechanisms.
Exactly.
Therefore, expecting it to propose, condone, or stick anything else will never happen. So you cannot use that as a standard of which to dismiss the existence of the things which science is not equipped to weigh in on,
But you're proposing
such as the existence of a deity or the existence of a god.
Can I provide an example of that?
Sure, go right ahead.
This is, of course, going at Smokey's point. An example where creation, in my opinion, creation geology fails is that I've never seen a creationist article explaining how, if Noah's flood happened, that would allow you to determine locations of XYZ thing in the way that standard geology does, right? Standard geology gives us the tools to find oil reserves, XYZ thing. Creationist geology, I haven't seen something that allows you to do that.
Well, actually, if I may, there was a...
Before you go, Nicholas wanted to say something, so...
I mean, I have a few favorite predictions that come from our side. One of them is that the so-called non-coding sections of the genetic code, if they have necessary functions, then that's a huge problem for the common ancestry theory.
No, it's not.
But really, okay, I don't want people to interrupt me at all. I just want to be able to talk, and then you can talk later, like I did with you, Leo Filius, when I didn't like what you were saying.
Interrupt you. I just said no, it's not. I said 3 words.
No, I didn't like what you were saying, but I waited. I would like that in return, and I think that's David's rule here too. Well, you did say something false, according to me. That's why I'm saying you don't want to do.
Leo's manic. I'm leaving. Bye, guys.
All right, see ya.
Hold on. Well, I wish Smokey hadn't left, but yeah, Leo. If you don't want to talk with me, then you can leave the room. But David's welcomed me in the room, and it's my turn to talk. So don't interrupt me.
I don't have to leave to not talk to you.
Right. So, Nicholas.
Well, that's up to you.
Hold on, Nicholas. You finished, and then Speed Us Out, I think, wanted to say a couple of things, and then we'll go back to Leo.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have about 3 minutes because I have an 8 o'clock appointment that I didn't plan on. So,
I'll let Speed go now. That's fine with me.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Anyway, on intelligent design being part of what we look for, I think it's always integral to what's being looked for. That we're looking for how information is handled, and if we found any mechanisms that indicated that something could not happen naturally, or it could happen by intelligent design, that would be big news. And a lot of the information books that I'm reading and information papers that I'm reading, this is one of the considerations. I mean, this is being looked for. It isn't like we're ignoring this. And if there's any mechanism that we cannot explain naturally, then of course we are going to seize that, and that would be the biggest news ever. I mean, that would be incredible news. It's not something that isn't on the back of our mind. And I think what you guys were talking about is believing authorities. Was that the original conversation, or whether or not you could rely on the authority of science to believe in evolution? Was that the question?
I think it was more on that. I don't even remember now what the initial point was when I came in.
Yeah. Earlier it was discussion of appeal to authority fallacy.
Yeah, and then
we've moved on somewhat.
Yeah.
There's the thing is that when it comes to certain authorities, like evolutionary biologists or people that study this, or people that study the abiogenesis field, they would be the authorities you appeal to. You don't want to appeal to just any scientist out there just because he's a scientist. So I mean, among those people, if you take a percentage of what they believe, then you're going to end up with a more. It's something I think you can rely on. There's nothing wrong with appealing to that kind of authority. If I have a tumor, I'm going to appeal to the neuroscientist's authority, or the cancer researchers or whatever. So I don't think it's an appeal to authority fallacy. It's what most people rely on. When my car starts misfiring, I go to a mechanic. I don't take it to a doctor. So I don't know. Even though a doctor has a PhD. But anyway, I got to run, guys. I just wanted to throw that in. I'd love to talk to you, Nicholas, about this 100% of the DNA being useful. But maybe I'll get done in time and I'll pop back in. But that's all I had. Thank you, David. I'm so sorry about the scheduling conflict. I could not get around it, so I will be back. Okay.
Peace out.
Later.
All right.
Take care.
Sure. Okay, so he is out. So Leo,
Oh wait, I was totally
I'm sorry.
not done at
Sorry,
all.
Nick. Sorry, go right ahead, Nick. Sorry, I do
Okay,
apologize.
so yeah, I mean, my understanding is that common ancestry evolution depicted very little function for the majority of the genome, and intelligent design predicted great amounts of function for the vast majority of the genome, and that now intelligent design is being proven to have brought the correct prediction. And we also have in Genesis chapter 10, where the nations are divided by Y chromosome, but the mitochondrial DNA would be mixed up. And that's exactly what we also find in observation. So that's my number 2 favorite prediction. And I have a third one I was thinking of, but I might have gotten too distracted. If you guys can give me maybe 7 seconds to see if I can think of it.
Can I go?
Well, we were talking about
after whoever's next, David.
Yeah, Neo, if you wanted to respond to what Nick said.
Yeah, none of those were predictions because there was no data to indicate those, which is why the scientists didn't think they were true. Now we're getting data that does indicate it, and so what the scientists are saying is changing based on that new data. But intelligent design didn't bring forward data that suggested these things should be true. They just disagreed with what the scientists said. And it turns out that, hey, the scientists were wrong. Now that we're actually collecting more data, it is indicating these things. So those weren't predictions that were made based on data.
Yes, also I would say that
By the way, sure, go ahead, Gavin, and then I'm going to respond as well. I have a couple things to respond to.
Yeah,
okay, these statements
sure,
like
sure.
that.
Look, the problem for how is it my turn or is it not my turn?
Yes, it is. Go.
Go ahead, Gavin.
Yeah, sure. So I was going to say, but yeah, there are.
So the problem.
Gavin's got a delay, so we'll just give him some time to go.
Okay, sure. So I was going to say, actually, mitochondrial DNA, the mtDNA phylogenetic tree actually has over 4,000 different haplogroups. So that's a far cry from only 3.
So can I just say my bit?
Yeah, yes. Sure. Go right ahead.
Yeah, the problem for the atheists in the room is still this. Despite almost 70 years of trying, science has not been able to create life in the laboratory. Now that means that you can claim the universe and life as a result of naturalistic processes. You can claim it, that's fine. But you have no justification for that claim.
Yes, we do. It's also worth mentioning that it's been God knows how long. And in fact, humans have never, just like we've never created life in the lab, humans have never created a star in the lab either. But we know that stars form naturally. Humans have never created a galaxy in the lab, but we know that galaxies form naturally. Humans have never created a black hole or a neutron star in the lab, but we know that those can form naturally. The fact that we haven't made life in the lab doesn't mean it can't happen naturally at all. That just doesn't mean it. What it means is that humans
those are false parallels.
No, they're not. Because he stated that because no, they're not. He's stating that because humans can't do it in a lab, therefore it can't happen naturally. That's literally the argument he made. That is wrong because humans cannot make stars in a lab, but stars form naturally. So the argument he was pushing is wrong.
Okay, let me jump in. Let me jump in on that real quick, Leo. If that were true, if there were a naturalistic process to create life, why haven't we seen it again?
Well,
because it requires a huge amount of time that humans aren't privy to. The same reason we've never seen a galaxy form, but we know it happens naturally.
Exactly. And I will want to point out that there have been some great experiments that yield nucleotides and
nucleotides, RNA that can self-amplify. We've done a lot of stuff in the lab. A lot of stuff.
Guys, I have
pathways to how life could have developed.
The latest RNA research
produced absolutely nothing.
Hold on, Leo. Stop getting crazy here.
Okay.
The latest RNA lab research is still done by an intelligent agent. There are they
All
have made. Hold on, let me finish. There are periods of self-replicating RNA, but it has always been done by an intelligent agent. The scientist has always guided it. There is no any evidence at all for life being created in the lab. And if it happened in a naturalistic process, we haven't seen it again. And it doesn't matter the time space that you're talking about.
Yes, it does.
See it now again anywhere.
No, we wouldn't. Not if we don't have. If we're not privy to. If something takes 100 million years to happen, how the fuck do you think we could ever watch it happen?
Easy on the.
We live for 100 years, if that. If something takes millions of years to occur, or even thousands of years to occur, we're not going to see it happen. We don't live that long.
Yes, we would. If you let me finish. If you'll let me finish. How old is the
for 1,000 years?
Hold on a sec, guys.
How old is the universe?
We really don't know. The furthest back we can go is 13.8 billion years.
Okay, we agree. How old is the Earth?
About 4.54 billion years.
Yeah. Why wouldn't we see it again then?
See what again?
See life being made right now if it takes millions of years, as you are stipulating, which I don't stipulate. Why would we not see it happening right now?
We don't live that long.
Yeah, and I would also
offer an answer
for life are generally consumed by things that are already living. So we don't live on the prebiotic Earth. We're not going to see what happens on the prebiotic Earth. You're asking for us to observe something that would not ever happen in the environment that we're in, because that isn't the environment that what you're asking for to observe ever happened in. So that's why we have to recreate those environments in the laboratory. That's not guiding an experiment. It's recreating the proper environment and then observing what happens in it with a specified amount of chemicals.
But that requires
That's how laboratory experiments work.
That requires a scientist. That's an intelligent agent.
So we're recreating naturally occurring environments. It doesn't matter that we're recreating it. That environment can still occur naturally. Humans can make water.
No life has ever been made in the lab.
Can humans make water? Can humans make water? Can humans make water using hydrogen and oxygen? Can we do that in the lab? Yes, we can. Does that mean water can't form naturally?
We do it on submarines.
Water can't form naturally then, because we can do it in the lab. Do you get what
you're making a false
what
parallel?
Your sounding says? No, I'm not. You're saying that because we can't do it in the lab, therefore it can't happen naturally.
Here's the thing: you're getting this is what I alluded to earlier with the vociferousness of atheists not trying to explore intelligent design the way
because
it is.
There's nothing there to explore. You have nothing.
Yes, there
you
is.
have nothing. It's the same reason I don't explore fairies doing it. What's the difference between fairies doing it and
that's an Aaron Ra and a Matt
Both of them have the same exact explanatory and predictive power, i.e. none at all.
That's an Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty answer.
No, it's not. You just don't have a response. That's why you're not providing one.
No, I am giving you a response.
That's why you're whatabouting somebody else.
Why can't we see? Why don't we see that same process happening
why
today?
We don't
Let him
I've
finish,
explained 3 times why
Leo.
we don't see it happen. I don't know how you haven't understood it yet.
I have the study right in front of me, and I have the current science in front of me from
So do I.
2020.
So do I.
You do? What's it called?
I can get you the papers here in just a second.
You know, I have the papers in front of me. It's called
That's
Mystery,
cool. I have my
Mystery of Life's
saved.
Origins
You
by
give me the time
7
to scroll through my
PhDs.
notes and pull up the links. I can give them to you. I have mine on hand as well.
You're going to show me that life is done in the lab.
No, we've never created life in the lab.
Correct. That's what I'm saying, and it has never been seen again in the natural world. Huh?
That's because we don't observe the environments under which it could form.
Right.
How part of that do you not understand?
No, I understand it, and any prebiotic soup could not make life. It's impossible.
Yeah, no, it's not impossible.
It is impossible.
No, it's not,
Even
because
James
in order for it to
Torres
be
said it's
impossible,
impossible.
you have to know that it can't happen, and you don't know that it can't happen. It would be fallacious of you to say because we haven't seen it happen, therefore it can't. So are you going to make a fallacy, or are you going to admit that it could happen?
It should be happening again right now.
Why? We're not in the environments for it to
Can
happen.
someone
Why
else
would it
step
happen?
in this conversation?
Yeah, I would really
Why
like
don't you let him
to.
finish?
Okay,
I
hold on a
asked
sec.
David
Nicholas-
for a turn. He said I may have one.
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead. Nicholas, I'm sorry. Nicholas, you have a quick word.
Yeah, I have a lot of agreement with both sides here. One thing is the reason that it's a false comparison with the cosmic bodies is because we have observations of the cosmic bodies. But Leophilius is absolutely right.
Different stages in life and chemicals that
Yeah,
life.
well, if I may finish,
Let him
Leophilius,
finish,
I
Leo.
waited without interrupting at all whatsoever.
Yeah.
And same to you, Gavin. Please also don't interrupt me. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so that's why it's a false comparison, is because we don't have the observations along the steps of the early abiogenesis. But then another aspect of this is that Leophilius is right. Now that we have life that's highly functional, if I'm entertaining their model and not assuming my conclusion, we have life that's highly functional, taking up the space that would have been required for abiogenesis. So we would not expect to see it today. That's really false there, Sandy Pigeon. But I do agree that we know enough about chemistry that we know abiogenesis is impossible. I mean,
No, we don't.
Perspective on it.
So,
Okay,
why
explain
would
how you established the impossibility. What observations told you it cannot 100% ever happen?
The complexification, there's no indication that that's possible for it to
No indication
complexify
that it's
unto-
possible doesn't mean it's impossible. That
Well,
is
it does
logically
mean it's a vacuous
No,
anti-science
no, it doesn't.
claim.
No, it doesn't. Because we have the data suggesting viable pathways to how life could have developed.
Right,
You are
and if I
claiming
can
that
jump
because
in real
it's a
quick.
complex series
And
of chemical processes.
Leophilius, I
occurring
like
over a
having the
very
back.
long period of
I like
time.
having the back and forth with you,
We
Leophilius.
can't
but
observe doesn't
the
mean it can't
problem
happen.
is that any little thing someone says, you insist on being the one to talk. So even David doesn't get to talk. No one gets to talk but you. You maybe should open your own stream on your own channel or something.
Right.
But we need to have more space to let each other talk.
All right, sure.
Well,
So
make sure that what you're saying is not just demonstrably wrong.
Leo.
Well, you can ask David Neff
Stop
to kick me out of the
talking.
room.
all right,
But if
here's what we're
David
gonna
Neff
do.
is welcoming me in the room, then you have to
Okay.
tolerate the fact that I say things. Just deal
Okay.
with it.
All right, guys. Here's what I'm going to do. I do not want to have to go this far, but I will if I have to. If it is not your turn to speak, I will be muting you. I don't want to have to do this, but if it keeps going on where people keep talking over top of each other, that is what I'm going to have to do. I do want to actually jump into this discussion. One of the reasons why, another reason why we're never going to see this is because, the environment is so different. Life as we know it today will never be able to exist in the prebiotic world, and vice versa. But more importantly, is that life today, they would be any new forming life would be completely wiped out, outcompeted by the resources. Now, what we do have is pretty much all of the ingredients for life, from the RNA nucleotide basis to pretty much everything we have is already there. So the question is now all what we really need is a catalyst to bring it all together.
Exactly.
And one final point, and then I'll let you guys get back to it, is that it is not really a difficult. To me, it's not very difficult to imagine how these could have gotten together naturally. If you know anything about how biochemistry works, all what really needs is a catalyst, and we're pretty close to discovering that. I actually want to point out that I think the definition of life, I know I would probably get myself beat up at a biology conference if I said this, but I actually define life pretty loosely as anything with a chemical anything with a chemical code that is able to self-replicate or the potential to self-replicate. Once you get that first self-replicating RNA or nucleotide base, you have so many unlimited potential from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing with life is we will never know the 100% exact path that life on Earth took through its development, because there are too many variables, too many minute changes in the Earth's environment that we would never be able to pick up or replicate that would have happened, that would have led to even minute changes in chemicals that led to life. All we will ever be able to do is figure out, okay, we know that these chemicals involved in these environments over this period of time, and this leads to this many viable paths for how life could have developed. But we will never be able to pick out one of those paths and say, yup, that's the one that it happened under. Also, it's worth pointing out that there isn't this defined line between life and no life. especially during its development. If we were to go back 4 billion years, we would have seen things that kind of looked like life, and then we would have seen things that kind of didn't look like life. It would have been much more of a gray area. So this isn't, I don't understand why this is really that hard to understand. But I think that it's because people would rather protect a preconceived notion than admit where the data is actually leading us.
Exactly.
Can I speak, David?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Gavin. Go right ahead. You've been waiting patiently. Go right ahead.
Yeah, sure. Look, the physical universe is governed by physical laws. We know that. Both the physical universe and physical laws, they're interdependent and they're irreducible. You can't have one without the other. Laws require a lawgiver.
No, they don't.
And
the laws of the universe are not some supervenient thing that prescribe
please.
They're descriptive.
Okay. Can you finish? Can you not talk until I'm finished, please? Laws require a lawgiver. And the fine-tuning,
See, and this is what I'm talking about. I want to address this one point at a time instead of hearing 5 points and having to address all of them. Yeah, because you're going from point to point to point to point. I'd rather tackle it 1 point at a time. You talked about laws, now you're going to fine-tuning.
I have not finished. I have not finished.
Okay.
Why don't you guys just don't understand how discussions flow? You take it point by point.
Can I finish?
All right, guys. Sure.
Otherwise, it's just galloping.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. So why don't you finish what you're talking about? Just finish your thought real quick, and then Leo, I do agree that I agree with Leo that we should take everything point by point rather than throw a bunch of everything out in the air and all that. So Gavin, just finish your thoughts, and then Leo, you can respond from there.
Yeah, sure. So we know this physical universe that we live in is governed by physical laws. These physical laws just didn't pop into existence on their own. There's a cause for these physical laws. And I'll end my time there.
All right. Just to I'll make a quick comment, and then Leo. Of course, this is committing the fallacy of equivocation between the definition of law. You're going from the definition of a law in like the colloquial legal sense, where there is a lawgiver, namely the government, and then in science, a law is a mathematical description of reality. So that's the first problem with your argument right there, is that the definitional is you're committing the fallacy of equivocation. Leo, you're next.
Yeah, what we call the physical laws, there actually is a lawgiver, and it's us. Those are descriptions of the consistencies that we observe in the universe, and actually almost every classical law is reducible to quantum laws, which are reducible to fundamental processes that can be described mathematically at the quantum level of reality. Again, these are just things inherent in nature. They're descriptions of what nature does that are conventions of our mind because we can observe nature and measure what it does. They're not some supervenient property that prescribes function to the universe.
Right.
If I may.
Yeah, go right ahead, Nicholas.
When we discuss these things, we're not discussing the description. We're discussing the fact that is being described.
We're discussing
that would be reality.
Well, we have to use words in order to discuss the facts, but Gavin's point is not where the description comes from. His point is where the fact comes from.
Us.
The fact does not come from us. Then we would be able to change the facts, but we cannot change the facts because the facts do not come from us.
We can change facts, but then they wouldn't be facts. Facts are things that it's a sort of a level of truth that we ascribe to things that we observe. So again, it just comes down to what reality does. A star emits electromagnetic radiation.
David,
that's a fact. But the fact that stars emit electromagnetic radiation doesn't require some sort of magical intelligent being. It's just something that nature does, that we can describe and that we can consistently observe as true. We call that a fact. So yes, fact, again, is a description of a consistency observed in nature or of a value of truth subjectively to something that we say in our language, like say that this is a cup or something like that.
Right. I think Gavin was next, and then someone else wanted to chime in after that.
I want to be next.
And then I may want to respond to Leo Phileas after that too.
Sure. just quickly. Leo, your statement that we are the lawgivers is totally fallacious.
No, it's not.
If we are the lawgivers, human beings are the lawgivers, be quiet, let me finish, please. If we are the lawgivers,
We are.
how come we can't make life in the laboratory?
That question, that's just a non sequitur. Your question doesn't follow from the statement that you made.
That's quite adequate.
It's perfect. If you claim
No,
we
because
are the
life is not a
lawgivers,
law.
we
Life is
should
not a
be
law.
able to make life in a laboratory.
We should be able to make stars in a laboratory. We should be
are
able to
the
make
lawgivers,
galaxies in a laboratory. We
should
still
be able
can't.
to make life in a laboratory.
Nope. That you're
statement is
misconstruing.
fallacious.
You're thinking that we made the universe work the way it does. That's not what I said. Our laws are descriptions of what reality does. Just because we can learn some about what reality does doesn't mean we can start just manipulating reality in any way we want. That's why we can't make it to Mars in 10 minutes. Even though we know how gravity works, we know how electromagnetism works, we still can't make it to Mars in 10 or 15 minutes. The fact that we can understand reality doesn't mean that we can just manipulate it at our whim.
Okay, so first of all,
Boom. Exposed.
friendly reminder, I am on Leo's side technically, but I guess just point of order, if you will. If I came in here, I didn't know Leo was an atheist, I would think he's pulling a naff for Dr. Batman or something. What you are saying other people are doing, talking too much, gish galloping, what have you, is exactly what you're doing a lot of the time.
No, it's not.
And now you're disagreeing with me.
Yeah, because that's not what
exactly
I'm doing.
with the point that you are saying other people do and you don't. Like
Yeah.
you're interrupting me.
No. Yeah,
when
because
you
you're
complain
making
about other
statements
people
about me
interrupting.
doing things that I never did, and I'm correcting you.
Okay.
And then I also had I mean, I'm not enjoying this stream because you're pulling what Mr. Batman or what Neff
No, I'm
does
not.
and just takes over stuff by talking too much.
No, I'm not.
Well, yeah, and
You just did.
well, instead of my response to Leo Filius, I do have to say that if Leo Filius can't control himself, then I'm going to leave soon also.
All right. Well,
I can control myself. You guys are just mad that I'm consistently and thoroughly
real quick,
correcting everything that you're saying, and you don't have a response.
Again, Leo,
I know that I'm
hold on a sec,
fine
bud.
with.
Hold on a sec.
He's-
Real quick, I am gonna, of course, I have to get up early for work tomorrow. A quick announcement: I'm gonna let the stream go on for about another 10 minutes, and then we'll have to wrap things up. There is going to be an open mic on Thursday, immediately following my debate with Smokey Saints on his channel. So I suspect that the open mic on Thursday will start at 6 p.m. Everyone's invited back, but I do want to make a quick final point. I would like to make a prediction. The prediction is if science is ever able to make a cellular life in a lab, the creationists are just going to throw themselves up in the air and say, aha, that means intelligent design, because this was intelligently designed by the scientist. Therefore, this proves intelligent design and not that it was completely natural. I'm going to make that prediction, and
I second. But that's the nature of conspiracy theories. It doesn't matter which way you slice it, the conspiracy theorist always ends up winning or being right. And that's exactly the point that David made. That's why creationism and intelligent design are conspiracy theories.
According to you.
No, they are. You need to know the nature of conspiracy
and that's the
theories.
problem with the bias that's been shown towards the intelligent design community.
There is no bias.
Yes, there is.
No, there's not.
Would you like me to read what Stephen Meyer and I'm
Stephen Meyer publishes pseudoscience.
No, he isn't.
Yes,
he
he
has
does.
a PhD. Do you have
That
a PhD?
doesn't make everything that he publishes 100% factual and correct.
I didn't say that.
I'm
was,
just going to say goodbye at this point. Leo Filius, I do look forward to our one-on-one discussion, but you do not have the adult manners to handle a group discussion, so I'm out.
I do it all the time.
All right.
It's only when I'm with Christians that there's a problem. I wonder why.
yeah, so as I said, we're going to
Yeah,
see
it's
you later,
pretty
Nicholas.
Christian of you.
I'll see you guys. This stream, of course, will be ending around 9:30. So, anyone want to wrap up any final points or any thing? Credo and Sandy, you guys have been kind of quiet. So, Credo, do you want to say anything?
Yes, so I wanted to say the argument about mentioned before was also that if we do not understand fully the physical laws of our universe, it must be created of God. This is very well-known false argument that if we don't know something, then with a God. First. Second, I totally agree with David's argument just before, that if we would create life in a lab, that creationists would argue first, it does not prove that life created by itself, because if we create something in a lab and it happens naturally and does not prove anything. And second, yes, they would interpret it for intelligent design because we made it intelligent. And third, these arguments are often like it is often simplification of science or misrepresentation of science. So I would definitely ask Nicholas to point me or other guys who know exactly to the material that he's talking about this Stephen Myers and other stuff, so I can properly read it and compare it to a mainstream science, so we take conclusion about it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Sandy, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to read this to Leo because part of my dissertation was on the bias that's shown to the ID community. And I'm going to read you a direct quote from Stephen Meyer. And here is the Stephen Meyer, when he published an article for the Smithsonian. In 2004, I published a peer-reviewed scientific article about the Cambrian explosion and the problem of origin of the biological information needed to explain it. I cited Doug Axe's results and explained why the rarity of functional proteins in sequence space posed a severe adequacy of neo-Darwinian mechanism. The article appeared in Biology Journal, and this is in italics, Proceedings of the Biological Society of Washington, published out of the Smithsonian Institution by scientists working for the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. Because the article also argued that the theory of intelligent design could help explain the origin of biological information, its publication created a firestorm of controversy. Museum scientists and evolutionary biologists from around the country were furious with the journal and its editor, Richard Sternberg, for allowing the article to be peer-reviewed and then published. They took, and this is in his quotations, they took away his keys, office, and access to specimens. A congressional subcommittee staff later investigated and found that the museum officials initiated an intentional disinformation campaign. Quote, Sternberg has no biology degrees, close quote. Actually, he has 2 PhDs, one in evolutionary biology and one in systems biology, close quote. He is a priest, not a scientist. He was demoted. End of quotation. And Mr. Sternberg was not a theist. There is inherent bias in the scientific community towards intelligent design, and even Mr. Gunter in 2016 at the Royal Society noted that the phenotypic forms for developing life forms, different limbs, etc., has not been able to be found in evolutionary science, and he was castigated. So I would highly disagree with you that there is bias in the intelligent design movement to have any kind of fostering of dialogue, and that's just a truism.
Yeah, and if I could respond to that real quick, the scientific community in the biology field has an inherent bias against creationism for the same reason that astronomy and cosmology has an inherent bias against astrology. It's both for the same reason.
Or that geoscience has an inherent bias against the flat Earth, or that exactly. the whole of medicine has a bias against anti-vaxxerism, because exactly. We know you're fucking wrong. As simple exactly. as that.
Well, I have an autistic daughter, and she was completely fine until she took an MMR shot. So I'm going to
I also have
Take
autism.
that
And
as-
that's completely wrong. There isn't a single professional in the field that still has their degrees.
I'm sorry,
and
but
still
you're completely
practice degrees with you.
you're completely inaccurate because Kelly Preston, John Travolta's wife, did an entire study on it and brought forth some PhDs and
Is she a
MDs.
vaccinologist?
You're appealing to authority. She brought forward
No, that's not an appeal to
scientific
authority.
evidence that the levels of
Is she a
thimerosal
vaccinologist?
that were, can I finish? The levels of thimerosal that were put into those vaccines were the reason for the autism.
Nope, we know for a
Thimerosal
fact
is
that
mercury.
can't cause autism. We know through genetics that cannot be a cause for autism. It literally cannot. There isn't a mechanism for it to do so. That
So,
is a fact.
Leo,
Fact.
would you go ahead and swallow a vial of mercury?
Of course not, for the same reason.
Mercury and thimerosal are completely different. It's like I wouldn't.
No,
I
they're
wouldn't-
not.
So yes, it
Thimerosal is
Yes,
mercury.
it is. Yes, it is. Thimerosal is not just pure mercury. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand chemistry. It's the same reason why I wouldn't eat just plain sodium, and I wouldn't eat plain chlorine, but I have no problem putting a little salt on my taco.
Exactly.
You don't
And
understand chemistry.
yeah, and I'm not going to drink. And I'm not going to drink bleach, but I'm certainly going to use it to clean up my house. You have to use the right tools for the right thing. And by the way, I would also chime in that I also have autism. I'm also autistic as well. And
So am I.
Why are 2 of the 3 atheists and assume autistic? That makes us look really bad.
no, it doesn't.
Hey, dude, we're all on the scale.
Ah,
But anyway,
I guess technically.
Technically, we're all on the scale. But
David.
Leo, no, that was
I
was
wouldn't
proven,
drink a
that was a
vaccine
proven
for the same
fact
reason
that the
I wouldn't
thimerosal that was
inject
put into those
apple juice.
vaccines, and
Right.
and it what's that?
Nope, never been proven. Nope, 100%. I said I would never drink a vaccine for the same reason I wouldn't inject apple juice. Apple juice, you drink it, it's
David.
just fine. It's not going to kill you, but inject it and see what happens. Same basic principle. You have to use
You-
things the
you
way they
inject
were designed to
mercury
be
into your
used.
veins, then you have
That's not what
problems.
thimerosal is. It's not. No, it's not. It's just not what it is. And there's
Right.
a
Oh,
huge
David, are we going to finish up the last
David.
bridge?
yeah,
Or-
I'm sorry, guys.
between
We got
ethyl mercury and methyl mercury. Huge
Exactly.
difference.
So yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I do apologize that we did get a little bit off track.
Hey,
Gavin,
David, can I just jump in? Hey, Credo, I put that material into the chat.
yeah, and Gavin, you can say a couple closing words, and then Jorge also, and then I do have to wrap up the stream. But again, there will be another live stream on Thursday, immediately following my debate with Smoky Saints. That debate is going to be on Smoky Saints channel. It'll be a phenomenal debate, and I hope you guys join me for that.
Sure, David. Would you be up for moderating and hosting a debate between me and Leo?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. So if you guys are up for it, I will gladly do that. If you guys want to do that, shoot me an email. And
Leo.
we'll get-
Leo, are you up for it? Leo, are you
Depends
up for
on
it? The topic is your assertion: man the natural lawgiver.
I don't think we're the natural lawgiver. That's
That's what
topic
you said.
wouldn't vie with me.
That's
If you want
what
to have
you
a discussion
said.
on whether or not laws are prescriptive or descriptive, I'll have a debate on that.
Sure.
All
So
right,
you're up
yeah.
for it?
I would say for the questions, just guys, read the Karl Popper and his criteria about falsification. So there is a way to think about what can be proven and talk about, and what can. Thanks.
All right. I'm sorry. I don't even know where we were.
Me.
Okay, yeah. If you guys want to debate, send me an email. I'll get that set up. Jorge, any last words?
Yeah, it seems as though we've started like 5 or 6 conversation threads here. So next time maybe we can focus in and try to keep on one, but who knows? That's how these live conversations go. So
Exactly. And this is why I love conversations like this and open mic and discussion. It's because you can go down a rabbit hole and explore various topics. And that's exactly why I love doing these streams. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me. Anyone want to say one final word before I end the broadcast?
Thanks,
Yeah,
David.
I just put in. I'm
thanks,
sorry. Go
David.
ahead, Gavin.
Thanks.
Thanks, David. And
You're very
thanks,
welcome.
Leo, for
Again,
ruining a good stream.
sure, definitely. Again, Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I will be having a debate with Smoky Saints on coronavirus and masks. Please join me for that debate. It's going to be fantastic, and there will be
Ooh,
open
that's
mic
gonna be
afterward.
fun. You said
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
and,
Thursday, correct?
Yeah, and Leo, if you want to help me prepare, send me an email and we can help, and we can maybe do like a practice debate together.
Right on. What is your email address?
It's in my on my thing. I'll put it in this private chat.
Okay.
David Neff at protondale.com. All right, there it is in our private chat. Anyway,
Okay.
thank you guys so much again. Join me on Thursday for an open